Border crisis, the worst in America's history. A majority of Americans see an invasion at the border. These are a few of the many headlines that I've read about the border between the United States and Mexico in the past couple of years. Growing up thousands of miles from the border itself in upstate New York, these headlines were really all I had to go on. Coverage from major news sources that painted a picture of an area infested with crime, with people trying to enter the United States unlawfully with drugs and guns, a threat to our safety. Coverage which in the 21st century surrounds us at all times, often reduced to 144 characters or less. But something about this picture never really quite settled right with me. It felt incomplete, like something was missing. So I decided to actually go to the border myself. In the process, I learned that what's actually going on at the border is quite different from how people write about the border. It's quite different from what I've learned about here in the halls of Hamilton College. Through storytelling, I've been able to learn how to share stories effectively in a way that rings true to the people I met while I was at the border between the United States and Mexico, the stories I heard, and the way that I grew as a person during that time. Storytelling is one of the most effective ways to build a community, to spread information and to share what situations are actually like. And there's some really cool evidence surrounding storytelling and oral communication. Take right now. Oral communication isn't just me shouting information at you. You, as the audience, aren't just passively receiving what I'm telling you. You're processing it. You're relating it to what you already know and how you already feel about a subject. Maybe you're nodding along when I say something you agree with, or tilting your head when something isn't quite right. There's some really cool evidence from Dr. Yuri Hassan at the Princeton Neurological Institute about how storytelling can help bring us together. He conducted a study that showed that the brain activity of you as a speaker and of your audience actually sync up while you're sharing the experience of a story. Right now, my brain is functioning in the same way as your brain, which is something that I find really cool. Storytelling is one of the most effective ways to bridge a connection between people, between groups of people, to bridge borders. Because of that connection, we are able to expand our worldview, to see other perspectives. It's why scientists are increasingly sharing their own personal stories and motivations of their research when presenting to the public. It creates an intellectual investment, an emotional bond between the speaker and the audience, and it's effective. That's why, for me, simply looking at the numbers when it came to the border between the United States and Mexico is insufficient to paint a picture of what life is actually like where two countries meet. I worked at an asylum shelter in Nogales, Sonora, one of the busiest border crossings between the United States and Mexico. There, I heard so many stories. Stories from people who are trying desperately to get to the United States to ask for asylum, for protection from their homeland. These were people who had faced insurmountable obstacles, horrendous journeys through violence, but they still had hope. It didn't matter what they had gone through in their journey to the United States, they were persistent in the face of an adversity that many of us living here in the United States can only imagine. That's a hope not captured in the headlines. But it is seen in how communities of migrants support each other. The shelter that I worked at, it was not a sad place. It was a bright and joyful space with hand-painted murals on the walls where people worked hand in hand to create food and maintain the property. Children ran around playing in the playground after school. For many of them, it was the first time in their lives they were allowed to be just kids. Not migrant kids, but kids. Amongst so much struggle, there was still so much joy, so much celebration of individual cultures and traditions. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of struggle and violence in the borderlands. There certainly is. But the way that we talk about the region as a whole dehumanizes the people who are actually facing that violence. Some narratives suggest that people trying to enter the United States unlawfully are coming to steal our jobs, to commit crimes, and generally upset the foundation of our society. Bunch of bad hombres, one might say. But those narratives don't take into account the story of Isabella, a 21-year-old single mother of two who fled her home in the night right before the local gang burnt her house down. Or the story of Pedro, a father traveling with his young son in desperate search of a doctor who can find them answers to the seizures his son has been having. Singular stories aren't dangerous because they're untrue. They're dangerous because they're incomplete. As Hamilton students, we are trying to prepare ourselves for lives of meaning, purpose, and active citizenship. Now, what that means is we have a responsibility to learn how to tell stories, stories that reflect the diversity of our worldviews and our perspectives. It means that we have to learn how to share what we've learned in the 4 years we spent on the Hill with everyone else around us. What good are the hours we spend laboring over our papers and our projects if we don't have the means to share what we learned with others? It's why I believe that oral communication is so important in today's world. Because what we have here from our time on the Hill are the tools to go out and change the world, maybe leave it a little bit better than how we found it. But those tools only work when we have the courage to share our stories.